Hello, everybody, and welcome to Composer Chats here at Westminster College. Our guest today is Lisa Despain, and before we get to that, I've got a couple things to shout out. First off, I'm here as the Director of Composition and Music Technology, but I'm also here as an artist in residence with Red Desert Ensemble, and we are doing a live stream next Monday, April 13th. Music by Yoko Ono and Michael Pizarro and up-and-coming experimental composers. Also, check us out at Westminster Performing Arts. We're going to be announcing our season in May for next year. And a very special thanks to Paula Fowler and Utah Symphony,
Woohoo!
Utah Opera, for making all these composer chats happen. This is our third one, and I'm very excited today to have Lisa Despain. And finally, thanks to the faculty at Westminster College for having us as artists in residence. We felt very supported here and had a great time, so thanks to everybody for that. Before we get started, I'm going to read a short bio of Lisa, and then we'll get into talking about some music. Lisa Despain, composer, is the recipient of a 2018 Opera American Discovery Grant and a 2020 National Endowment for the Arts Grant for That Hellbound Train, her Deal with the Devil blues opera. That Hellbound Train is based on a story by Robert Bloch, Psycho, libretto by David Simpatico, who did the stage adaptations of the musical 1 and 2, and the life and deaths of Alan Turing. Lisa is also the winner of the 2020 Zepic Modern Opera Commission for Opera Kansas. Together with her writing partner, Rachel J. Peters, their opera, Staggerwing, celebrates the historic win of the 1936 Bendix Trophy race by female pilots Louise Thaden and Blanche Noise. The first time women were allowed to compete. Lisa and Rachel are also the creative team of No Ladies in the Ladies Book, commissioned by Utah Opera for the Spike 150 celebration. Miss Despain's music theater works include Storyville, based on the final days of the New Orleans legalized red light district, with lyrics by Oscar Award winner Kirsten Anderson Lopez, who did Frozen, and Like I Care, a pop musical for youth addressing teen bullying. Highlights of her concert works include the oratorio, American Nativity, which is a Christmas oratorio, Toccata for jazz piano, and The Bicycle Shop, commissioned by the U.S. Air Force Band of Flight to commemorate the Wright Brothers Centennial. Her multiple awards include the Aaron Copland Fellowship, a Dramatists Guild Fellowship, the ASCAP Commissioning, honoring Duke Ellington, and an NEA Jazz Fellowship. A Utah native, she is a graduate of Mountain View High School in Orem, Utah.
Shout out. Got a shout out to Utah.
There you go. And currently a professor of music at LaGuardia Community College.
And shout out to LaGuardia.
Yeah. So, Lisa, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We're really excited.
Over the internet.
Yes, over the internet. And it's
over the internet.
Crazy times, so thanks for making the time to be here. The first
Delighted
thing I want
to
to
be
do
here.
is I want to play a piece of yours called Dreaming of Blue Oz, performed by the Manhattan School of Music Jazz Ensemble with you conducting. And I just want to say now that if you go to Lisa's website, you'll be able to hear all of the excerpts that we're playing today, except for some works in progress, but her website is a great introduction to her work. So let me just do one thing and play a short excerpt, and then we'll get into chatting.
Great. Thanks. Sure. Well, the story is just one of those crazy, creative stories. When people ask, where does the inspiration come from? It comes from life. It just comes from bizarre things. If it's odd and strange and big, you should probably think about that as a creative impetus. So literally, I used to be somebody who hit the snooze alarm all the time. And I love to sleep in. And literally one morning I hit the snooze alarm, and that time when you're sort of awake but you haven't really woken up, you have these bizarre surrealist dreams. Well, that's what happens to me. So I hit the snooze alarm, and I had this dream that I was in The Wizard of Oz with Jimi Hendrix and Count Basie and Tito Puente and all the great jazz artists, Thelonious Monk. And then, when I finally woke up and became aware, I thought, I think that's a big band chart. And so I just went to the piano and started writing. And that's what it is. It's a surrealist dream with the Wizard of Oz and all the great jazz artists. So, just the beginning, it's like I started with just a blues form. It's a 12-bar blues. And then you hear Mingus come in as he does a bass solo. And then Mingus, in comes Mingus. And I wove into it this idea of the Munchkins. Wah, 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 wah. You have these little wah, wah, wah with moving trumpets every time. And then I took the O-E-O-O-O theme and turned it upside down, so it's that bay-oo, bay-oo, baby-doo. And I just loved playing with crazy, how could I push the level of incoherent things yet still make it coherent, so I wasn't losing the audience, so that it wasn't pure chaos, because you can't have pure chaos because your audience will tune out. But how could I push the envelope to the point of, like a surrealist dream, it seems real but it's not, but it's weird, but then there's something that pulls you back and grounds you in it. And so that was the challenge of that piece as I kept writing it. And in the end, it was really kind of fun. You were going to ask a question. Let me stop there.
Oh, yeah. Well, for me, when the guitar comes in, it's more than just notes on a page. And you're composing with something a little bit different. And we talked a little bit how you compose with character. And you're very much thinking about that in this piece. Maybe you could talk about that a bit.
This one was very early. And I will say this. This is really the piece that I constructed purely for love. I was in college at the time, finishing up my master's degree, and I just wrote it out of a creative impulse. And it is the piece that, we got the performance to happen, and then I started winning awards by submitting this piece. So it was really the piece that brought attention to my work and allowed me to then create more works. The guitar. So I would say this, it was before I really had deep dived into storytelling, but certainly I'd had a very strong experience that was this collage of imagery and emotion, and that's the impetus that I grabbed onto to construct all of the chaos, yet grounding it in the blues, grounding it in the language that I really knew. Which was jazz and big band and the blues. And it was the beginning of my exploration of pushing the envelope as far as I could go and then catching. We talked about yin and yang and audiences, how sometimes if you push the envelope too far, your audiences shut down because they stop hearing. If you're too safe, they stop hearing. If you're too... if you don't give them anything that they can hang on to, you lose them also. So this exploration of how do you give them something that they sort of a world they know in, and take them on a journey so they'll go with you when you don't, and just before you lose them, bring them back. I think the blues is a real anchor to this piece that allowed me then to go off and do crazy things. Because as this piece goes on, the time changes. I actually have part of the band playing in a gut bucket blues while the drummer and they start to go over to a Latin jazz thing, and so we have two time periods going on at the same time. So, cool. But the blues is what grounds it.
Cool. And you said this piece led you to other opportunities in terms of your career. How did that work?
Well, okay, the true story is I was on the road with the circus, and this was just when the internet started happening. And I was doing some composing at that time, and it was right when the internet started happening, and there were these competitions online. And so I just started writing in my hotel rooms, and I had this piece, and I sent it off to ASCAP for, this is when I would go on the internet and I would find these competitions, and I would write towards these deadlines, which is very important for a composer. And I submitted this piece, which I had recorded with the Manhattan School of Music Jazz Orchestra. I submitted it to the ASCAP Centennial Commission honoring Duke Ellington, and I won. And I was like, what? I also have I won in 2 weeks, this and the American Composers Forum Continental Harmony piece, and I believe I used this for both submissions. So it was the universe telling me that I should stop touring with the circus, come back to New York and be a composer, which I did do.
Cool.
So it was the piece that I think showed my creativity, and people had faith in that and jumped in and gave me more opportunities. So thank you, ASCAP. Thank you, American Composers Forum. Thank you, people who thought it was funny and wanted to commission me. So
cool. And then you were also saying that the comfortability with writing for big jazz ensemble led you to some other big ensemble opportunities. What were those, and what were some pieces that you did there?
Well, after winning the Duke Ellington commission, I presented a new piece at a big conference in New Orleans, and my premier ensemble for that piece, it was called Fatima's Garden, which really explored my interest in Spanish music. My name is Despain. I had an interest in Spanish music. But after that commission, which was for big band, and the U.S. And the band of the Airmen of Note, the U.S. Air Force Airmen of Note was my ensemble. It brought my attention of my big band writing to the to the Air Force. And I was approached by Colonel Alan Sirix, who asked me to then take on writing for wind ensemble. And he commissioned me several times to write for his band of flight. So I moved from writing for big band into writing to wind ensemble, which was a little bit of a daunting task, because I'd never written for oboes. I was like, what do I do with an oboe? Does an oboe swing?
Yeah.
Does a bassoon swing? I don't know what to do. But he was very gracious with me and believed in me and gave me the opportunity. So the result was I ended up writing two pieces to honor the Wright Brothers Centennial. One of them was called Into the Realm of the Gods, and the other one was called The Bicycle Shop. Do you want to play The Bicycle Shop for me?
I do want to play The Bicycle Shop. So this is a short excerpt of The Bicycle Shop, performed by the University of Washington Wind Band, directed by Shana Stahl. Cool. So that piece, to me, is such a clear idea, and such a different approach to writing than the jazz band piece, but still has elements of your music, which I think has joy in it, and I think it's got humor in it. I'm interested because as we go through this talk, everyone's going to hear that you go through lots of different genres. What do you do when you're approaching a different genre? How do you deal with that?
I find out which one of my friends knows more than I do about that genre. Right. And I throw myself at their mercy and say, help me, tell me everything you know. I've had this joy and fun of being challenged all the time with nearly every commission. Nearly every commission has pushed me outside my comfort zone, like it's stepped me away from big band to all of a sudden wind ensemble. I didn't know how to write for oboes. But I thought to myself, okay, I can write for clarinet. I can write for saxophone. I know the basic of woodwinds and brass instruments. So it was actually a lot of asking the players to play for me and give me feedback. So does this work? And the truth is, Professor Sirix, or sorry, not Professor, Lieutenant Colonel Sirix, the academic world, and he commissioned me multiple times, and I had some failures. But he kept believing in me and coming back and letting me try again. So my first work was not a home run. And, I would get feedback, and they would play it for me, and I would hear it. I could hear myself a lot of the critical things I needed to fix. Oh, it was too long. Oh, I spent too much time here. I needed to reorchestrate this. And so trial and error. And then trial and error, asking friends, can you play this for me? Is this playable by a trumpet? What do you think? Tell me. So I'm not just writing for myself. I'm writing with needing feedback. And every time I don't know what I'm doing, I want to say yes. I guess it's the yin and yang thing again. I think I have enough to say yes. So I say yes, but then I say, help me. And I'm doing that I've never, I think, take on a project where I haven't said, help me. Tell me what you know. There's always somebody who knows more than me. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the fun of the journey.
Yeah.
So the bicycle shop was one of those. And I think the bicycle shop was one of my more successful, I'm starting to understand how the wind ensemble works as a bigger band, as a weightier ensemble. I threw less in. Like in the beginning, I was like, I'm going to write for every instrument playing all the time. And I had to learn to dial back and write space so that the clarinets or the oboes or something light could come through. Percussion, writing for percussion was hard. I'd never known. And I still struggle writing for percussion. That's somebody I call up every time. What do you do here? Tell me what you got. You got more colors than I know, so tell me what I can, help me with, build my palette. Yeah. As you were playing, I was also thinking about storytelling, because, of course, nowadays I write very much for dramatic storytelling, opera, musical theater, and so forth. And I started remembering while you were playing that many of these early commissions were from communities. They were community-based commissions. The American Composers Forum, I had several commissions with them. And the Air Force, every one of them had a specific mission. So in order to write for the Wright Brothers Centennial, the Air Force actually flew me to Dayton, Ohio, and I visited the environs. And I went to the bicycle shop where the Wright Brothers worked. And so that's where I began to get the story impulse. And so I think early on as a composer, because I was always writing for communities and I wanted to create music that came from their specific communities, I learned elements of storytelling, even in instrumental music, so that the community could feel it was directly coming from their identity, their heritage, their stories, their community.
Yeah, well, and something that's great with that, too, is that the community always wants to get the music played. One thing that you said to me the other day was that all the music you've written, you've heard, that groups have played it. And you don't have a stack of 20 string quartets that are waiting for a string quartet to come and play them. It's more you build the relationship with the community, and then the community wants you to come and give them a contribution, and so then they play it, and then you get the feedback of having that played, and so it's something that's informing your work.
Yeah, I always work with, I'll call people up and friends, I want to write for you. Can we create something? And then we find a way to create it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as a composer, our voice is our musicians.
Yeah.
Unless you're a performing composer, and I can do some of that, but when you're dealing with bigger works, it's not just you. You're just one of the engines that's creating this community experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so after you worked in wind band, you then started thinking about other instruments.
Yeah.
Most notably strings, and there's, I don't know where the solo piano piece fits, and then work on the oratorio. But if you want to talk about next.
Sure. So I think what happened for me is I started realizing as a jazz composer, I wasn't being commissioned by jazz ensembles because most of jazz ensembles were composer-led. So, but what I was getting was I was having multiple classical ensembles approach me and ask me to write for them in a jazz-based language or an American language. And so I started to realize, hey, there's a trend going on here. What's the next jump from wind ensemble? Wind ensemble seemed scary. I asked myself, what's the scariest thing? And the scariest thing from wind ensemble is string quartet. Because I did not grow up with strings in my home. My brother was a trumpet player and a bass player. We're talking like electric bass. We were jazz musicians, not classical string players. So I was working with this brilliant choreographer, Donlin Foreman, and we had just done a jazz-based ballet called Mean Old World. We premiered that at the New Victory, and we got a lot of love from the press, and we thought, hey, this is a special collaboration. And we wanted to continue it, and so he came to me and he's like, what do you want to do? And I thought, I want to push myself. Can I write a string quartet ballet? And he was like, sure, let's do it. So, it was the call to a call, a friend of a friend. Who do we know? And the next thing you know, I've got the Cassatt String Quartet jumping on board. And the Barlow Endowment commissioned this. We got funds from the Mary Flagler Live Music for Dance. And the next thing you know, I'm writing a string quartet that got premiered as a ballet at the Joyce.
Great. What I'd like to do now is play the third movement of this quartet. This is performed by the Cassatt Quartet, and the third movement is called Song. So that was the third movement of Lisa Despain's string quartet called Song. I think it's a really great again, irreverent and fun and light, but still interesting approach to making music. And, Lisa, you said something that stuck out to me, which was, you said American and jazz-based language. I'm wondering, what do you consider your influences as a composer? How broad are they? What do you mean by American and jazz-based? How do you describe yourself in terms of style?
American and jazz-based. I'm writing these things down so I can try to stay on topic. I can't help it. I'm an American girl. I was born in America. I've traveled a lot, but I'm inherently American. The sounds I grew up with early on were American. Now, I grew up in Utah, and there's a lot of pioneer heritage. So we have a lot of folk song, hymns, cowboy songs, things that we grew up with, a lot of folk music. Jazz was something I tripped into because of great teachers, and I just gravitated towards it as an early girl. I mean, one of my earliest memories is Louis Jordan singing the dooby doo ooby doo, I want to be like you, woo woo shooby dooby doo doo. I mean, I was a little girl when I was hearing the Jungle Book song. And then I also, okay, this is crazy. I was playing Mozart, right? Everybody has to learn Mozart when they're playing piano. But at about 13 or 14, when Star Wars came out, I mean, there's the great Skywalker themes and the great Darth Vader themes, but of course, the Katina Band. I just drew to that music. So I think I realized early on that I had this interest in jazz, and I pursued it as much as I could. My brother was, again, a bass player, and I just tripped into Count Basie very early. I was probably about 13 or 14 when I fell in love with jazz, and I just deep dived into it. And of course, jazz is an American music. So I took on as a young girl, jazz as my study and as my voice. And I've just found that that's where my gift was. Now, bringing that forward as a composer, one of the great things that happened to me very early on when I left the circus and became a composer, was I won this beautiful opportunity to live in Aaron Copland's home. A Copland Fellowship, and I spent 2 months in the dead of winter living in Aaron Copland's home, writing on Aaron Copland's desk with nothing but the trees and the deer around me. And because that was very early in my switch from being a jazz pianist to being a composer, I think it was very crucial in taking on his mission, because he was really a pivotal composer that helped break away the American sound from the European sound and deep dived into folk song. And the fact that his mission was to create music that was American, that was his mission. And I think that I absorbed that mission, knowing that I came from it, generations later, but also from a jazz musician. And then as I moved forward through all these different opportunities, the ability to bring that jazz language and that American language forward into non-jazz ensembles, but still hold on to that and refine that sound and play with that sound. And of course, the deeper I went into my research of how do I make an American sound, the more I went back into the blues and into folk song. And it brought me kind of full circle back in a way to the early Mormon roots of hymns, and because the connection between spirituals and hymns and the blues have these very deep connective roots in our history. Does that answer your question somewhat?
Yeah. Well, and something that stuck out to me is that, when I think of John Williams, I always remember that his dad was the drummer in the Raymond Scott Quintet. And so I wonder about that cantina, if that music, was floating around as little John Williams was just being a kid around a musical family. That, when I think of Raymond Scott and Carl Stalling, which is a different flavor of jazz-influenced American music. So I hear all of these different influences.
I remember one time my agent asking to put me up for a French film, and I'm like, no. No. I mean, I think it would be great. It was about like the Tour de France, and I was like, but I'm not going to service it because I'm not going to be of good service to that score because inherently I sound American. Like, I love Ravel, but it's not so steeped into my cells as Bernstein is, or Copland is, or Duke Ellington. That is just the way my creative, mind and brain and energy has been formed. And I'm happy with that. I like that sound.
Great.
So, yeah.
I just have one more question about the instrumental music, and then we'll pivot to your vocal writing. In both the string quartet and the big band piece, you're asking performers to do things that are a bit unconventional, especially with that guitar. It's almost like the guitar flies in from a different planet, which is a hard thing to do as a performer. So how do you get performers to realize ideas that they might be a little bit uncomfortable with at first? Or was the string quartet uncomfortable with singing like that? Or
I wrote down a little note here. I just have to remind every performer who ever works with me, I'm going to ask you, or you're going to say to me, I should say, you're going to say to me, you want me to do what? Yes. But I'm going to make it fun and safe. I think there's a lot of, because I like to push a little bit. I've had many performers go, what? Really, my guitar player, he's like, you really want me to do what? And I'm like, yes, no, I need you to come in there just like guns blazing. And I kind of looked at him and said, you've got to turn your amp up to 11. I mean, it took me a while for him to coach him in. I think the thing that happens for me is I'm a live musician. I love live performance, and I love to be in the room to help the composers, or excuse me, I should say to help the performers. So there's often me being in the room saying, especially at a first time, a premiere, saying, yeah, that's exactly what I meant, and here's what I want, and here's what the vision is. So when they see my vision, and they know that it's fun, and it's safe, and nobody's going to get hurt, and finally, I just have to coach them a lot to say, yep, that's what I want, and it's going to be fine, and here's why I chose that. I don't like to choose things just to be clever.
Right.
If you can smell clever coming a mile away, it's not clever.
Yeah.
So helping them understand what it was I was trying to say. For example, the singing in that string quartet, it's really to me almost a haunting of the millions and millions of unsung workers. Like, I imagined all of the women who used to work and in washing clothing and labor and whose names we don't know. And the idea of the work song. So it says that it's very quiet. The string quartets and the plucking should be in the front of the singing so that the singing feels like the voices of thousands of unsung heroes, of unsung laborers. And so when they understood what that was, they were like, oh, okay, great. And now we can do that. Got it.
Great. Some of this also, when we were talking the other day, you talked about this triangle of people that you think about when you're writing for it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's over time I realized through many experiences that I cared about three things, and I've created this mission statement, which is a triangle. And I have myself, I have my performers, and I have my audience. And I realized that with every piece of music I create, I want to do something that feels authentic. I think that's what I'm talking about with that American voice. I want to do something that's authentic, that I know I feel really confident I can pull off and do really successfully. But I also don't want to repeat myself. I want to challenge myself. Life is about growing, So I wanted to try a string quartet, even though I was shaking in my boots. I always want to do something that I feel I can do well, but I also want to live a little bit on the edge because I want to learn something. I want to go through an experience that pushes me. And so that's the yin and yang for me. And I realized that when I start to work with performers, and I love my performers, and my performers are actors on stage and instrumentalists in the pit, and I love to give them music that brings them joy and makes them sail and succeed on stage. But a performer doesn't want to phone it in either. They've trained to do glorious things on the edge. So give them a beautiful money note, but make sure that everything that you've done up to that point, make sure that they can succeed at that. And to not give them something that's going to cripple them on stage. I saw one time an actor being asked to do something on stage, and I could tell as soon as the response was negative, the light went out of his eyes, and I vowed that moment never to do that to an actor ever again. I would never, it wasn't me that did it, by the way, but I saw him doing it, and I thought, I will never put an actor on stage and ask them to do something like that. I have to protect my singers, my actors, my instrumentalists. So it's that was part of the mission. So I want to give them something that makes them succeed beautifully at their craft, yet also pushes them, because they're hungry to be pushed. They're hungry to see how far they can go too, but not to cripple them. Never cripple them on the stage. And I think it's the same thing for the audience. I come from a family who wasn't musicians at the beginning. You know, they've learned music through myself, a little bit through my brother. You know, I look at my friends, my neighbors that I grew up with, and I think of that's my audience. Just kind of salt of the earth people who don't come from the entertainment industry. And they want to be engaged, but they don't want to be bored. Yeah. So I think about my audience, and I want to give them an experience that takes them on a journey. And again, it's the idea of, let's start from some place that you know. And the minute they know they're safe, I can take them on a little bit of a rapid ride. And the minute we're about ready to go over the waterfall, I try to do something to bring them back in and say, no, you're safe, you're okay. And I think by doing this, I hope I give them a really emotional journey, a real connection to the art, and that they walk away from that experience with a profound emotion, whether that is a profound joy, whether it is a thought that gives them empathy for a character, or just some kind of like moment where they go, wow, that is the power of the arts, and I am a better person for having been in that room, having heard that experience, having been a part of that. They are a part of it. I draw so much energy from them. So I always write with a lot of people in my head. I hope that answered that.
Yeah, well, and I think it is giving us some insight into how your music, there's a directness and an honesty to your music, and I think it's these things you're thinking about that help amplify those ideas.
Yeah, I think, you know, I want my father to be able to be proud of me. I want him to have, like, been able to walk into everything I write and go, wow, Lisa, I enjoyed that. You know? Wow.
Cool.
That's what I think about.
So now I want to talk a little bit about your vocal music and larger scale music theater and opera pieces, which you're becoming more and more known for. And maybe tell us a little bit about your approach to vocal writing. I know you said when you approach instrumental writing, you always sing the parts that you're writing, or you think about them being sung. But how do you approach vocal writing? And then we can play a little bit of Where Are You Gonna Go, Honey from Storyville?
Yeah. So vocal writing, again, it's one of those things that I think I've learned over time, because, again, I came as an instrumentalist. I came as a pianist. But one of the great industries in New York is being an accompanist. And so after graduate school and leaving the circus and working as a composer, you know, I would still do a lot of accompanying. And here, of course, there's Broadway and cabaret and my delve into musical theater. So after I realized I was a composer, the other person that came into my life was Maury Yeston. And Maury Yeston took me under his wing because I didn't know how really to create a composer career. I was like, I had always wanted to be a jazz musician. So how do I become a composer? Well, Maury Yeston grabbed me, put me under his wing. I was a member of the BMI Musical Theater Workshop, and my first really great partner was, of course, Kristen Anderson Lopez. And how blessed was I to work with somebody who cared so much about storytelling. We deep dived into storytelling so much, and I learned so much from her. And I think it's working with those influences in my life and over and over and over again that I learned. And a combination with hearing singers all the time, hearing how they could breathe, hearing the good songs, and then hearing when things wouldn't land. I would be in these rehearsals and I'd hear things that weren't landing. Why are they not landing? Oh, there's not enough breath. They haven't set the syllable correctly. Why are we not getting the message across? So seeing, again, a lot of great work and a lot of work that was in progress. So it taught me a lot about writing lyrics, and I've just thought a lot about it. So I cared a lot about, when I'm given a piece of text, clarity. I think this comes from a very musical theater background, where your audience oftentimes hears the line one time only. They haven't prepped themselves like opera to hear that line, that they know the line in advance. In musical theater, it's often one time you get to hear that line, and if you lose your audience member and you're delivering a very important piece of information, you've probably lost them for the rest of the night, and you will not get them back. So when I look at a line, I'm always asking a lot of dramatic intention, emphasis of words, and I'm looking at the natural beats of speech. So actually, I think we should go ahead and jump to Happiness, to the Hellbound Train, which is the work I'm doing right now, which is kind of a hybrid musical theater. The opening line is, "Happiness is where you find it." And I spent a lot of time just saying, how does that line sit in my mouth? Happiness is where you find it. How do I want Martin, who is our character, what is he saying there? I don't want to go, happiness, because that dilutes what that word is. There's a power to happiness is where you find it. So I would say over and over again, happiness is where you find it. And where's the natural scansion? Where's the natural meter? And I just found that there's this accent. Happiness is where you find it. And then he's angry at his mom, so he takes a breath and he goes, "Right, Ma?" And right there, I would diagram, happiness is where you find it. Take a breath. Right, Ma? Because he needs a breath to, get mad. And then I would finally diagram it. Oh, it's like, happiness is where you find it. Where's the breath? Don't miss accent. Don't put happiness. It's not happiness is where you find it. Or is it? So I talk a lot with my writing partners, but happiness is where you find it. That's what he's saying. And so how do I diagram that as close to the natural speech rhythm as possible in meter? So 4/4, happiness is where you find it. Right, Ma? And then after I have the rhythmic structure, of the line laid out, then I go back and listen for the prosody. What is the actual natural tonal shape of that line? And that's where a lot of dramatic back and forth with my writing partners helps. What do you want? Is it happiness? Happiness is where you find it. Where is it? And it's happiness is where you find it. Right, Ma? So I create the melodies oftentimes from our natural vocal tones. I just spend a lot of time listening to my natural ups and downs of the speech pattern. And that's how I construct a lot of those melodies.
Interesting.
Was that helpful?
Yeah. Well, and do you always start with rhythm first with vocal, or?
I always start with the drama first.
Drama first.
I really want to know how this character is proceeding through the song, because that informs a lot of these choices. A lot of, is the character angry? Is the character sad? Because I think those different emotions will cause me to make different choices in the melody. It'll cause me to make different harmonic choices. It'll cause me to take different choices in the meter. If I know what the character is after and what's that immediate, authentic impulse coming from that character, that's what I'm trying to create the sound. That's the music that I'm trying to create. If I don't know what that character is doing, if I don't know what that character wants, it's going to sound like I, the composer, am going to create something rather than coming out of out of the character. So drama first, story first.
Great. Well, let's listen to, this is a little bit of Free.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Performed by Jason Gautier,
one of my students.
Jason Gautier.
Gone big on Broadway.
And did you write this libretto, or are you working with someone? Okay.
This is David Simpatico. Brilliant. Hello, darling. I think he's watching. Hello.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. This will be the whole piece.
Happiness is where you find it. Right, Ma?
Henry Butler.
Happiness is where you find it. Right, Ma? Here's hoping my life's gonna open out on the rails. Like Pa used to tell me, you don't need money, 'cause everything is free, 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 finally free, finally free. And if I'm lucky one day, I'll catch a ride on that hellbound train, where all the sinners have a grand old time, with the drunks and the drifters, the gamblers and grifters, sinners all in their prime. But what happens when the train pulls into the depot down below, where you burn forever in the lake of fire, in the waters of eternal woe, where the devil finally takes his due? Huh, boy, what a lousy way to go. Still, it would be a lovely ride if there's such a thing as a hellbound train, with the soft velvet cushions and the sulfur stink, which of course I know there isn't. Well, at least I don't think. Happiness is where you find it, right, Ma? Where I am who I am, and where I'm finally free, free. Look at me, Dad, look at your boy, the hobo's life for me, the hobo's life for me.
One thing I was thinking about while I was listening.
Oops, I'm losing you.
Oh, are you there now?
There you are. Great.
One thing I was thinking about while listening to that was when you're composing with emotion, I feel like one thing that when I'm working with students is that they don't go far enough with whatever they're trying to emote. They kind of get there a little bit and they think people are going to perceive it. With you, it's very clear. I mean, I can even see it when I look at the waveform, like as the piece goes up and comes back down. How do you know when you've got everything working together, the harmony and the rhythm and the emotion and the lyrics all going at the same time? How do you know when to stop pushing any of those elements? Is there a feeling you have, or?
I would say that it is. There's a feeling you have. There's also when you get feedback from people that you trust, putting it in the mouth of an actor and then getting feedback from them or from a trusted collaborator, and they'll say, yeah, okay, we're done. And I still think there's always a tinkering up until, the end. Composers can tinker for forever. Gosh, that's a really good question, and I have to say it's a gut thing.
Yeah.
It's a gut thing. There's moments where I just oh, that's it. I'm working on Staggerwing right now, and I keep rewriting the same movement, and I'm kind of frustrated that I rewrote it twice, and I was like, I think I got it this time, and then I listened to it in context, and I was like, nope. I'll tell you this, if there's doubt, keep pushing, but also don't push immediately. Step away. Step away, because you may need some clarity. And then with clarity, you will go, oh, you have to constantly gut check yourself. I will do this. I will step away and clear the palette and come back when I haven't been immersed in the piece and check my very first emotional response to hearing that piece. And that's when I can say, yeah, that decision was good, or that decision needs to be worked on.
Interesting. So in some ways, you're trying to put yourself back into a position of maybe hearing it the first time and say, yep, got it, or nah, no. Go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, having to like step out of your body and listen to it as a listener.
Yeah.
You know, how am I experiencing this music without being emotionally connected to it as the writer, as the composer, of the person who created it? I have to listen to it as an audience member, not as the composer. And that takes time to step away from things, to come back and go, oh, now I see the issue that needs to be fixed. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Another thing you had said to me was that you felt like so much of the work you've done had put you in a good position to start on this journey writing operas. How is writing an opera different than some of the other things that you've done? What are some of the challenges? What are the things that you're excited about? Opportunities in opera that aren't in other genres?
I'll tell you, I'm still learning it, and that's great. I'm learning it. I think the first fear I had when it's opera is the weightiness of the voice, which is different than a musical theater voice. Now, we just listened to Jason, who is a musical theater voice. I'm going to be working with Utah Opera the next 2 months, remotely, thank you, but we get to work remotely, and I get to hear the weight of what I'm doing in a bigger voice. And so I am still learning. I will be rewriting. Are my musical theater rhythms and guesses that I've made as a composer going to still be clear in an opera voice, which requires more space and more weight? The first thing I did was call up a good friend, Jim Wordsworth, and say, Jim, what is Fach? What is that? What is the difference between, I didn't know the voices and I'm still learning them. And that is calling my friends, making them sing, calling my friends saying, does this work? And it was great because when I started studying the voices, I knew I was in uncharted territory, but it took me back to early college when I was first learning the properties of how does a trumpet player work? When does a trumpet player need breath? What are they really juicy at in this? All of a sudden it took me back to my orchestration skills and studies when I was in college, and it felt really great to be like learning again. I'm a student again. The other thing that I think I am so excited about with opera that I haven't been able to do in musical theater, and it was coming from my dear collaborator, David Simpatico, who pulled me aside and said, in opera, make it director-proof. Meaning, if you want something to happen on stage, an action or emotion, something on stage, you write it in the music. Now, in musical theater, you oftentimes leave that up, I think, to the playwright and the director. But all of a sudden, I'm realizing that not only am I writing a piece of music for vocalists and these great arias, but I'm writing all of the action. So you can hear in Free, there's this Henry Butler piano thing that happens, boom, boom, and the idea is that you're seeing his belongings being flung over the wall of the orphanage, and boom, boom, he's climbing up the wall, and boom, he lands. Happiness is where you find it. Picks up his bag. Right, Ma? You construct everything in the music. I have moments, well, when Martin gets his first apartment and he's with the landlady, I have a roach running across the stage and she smashes him. It's in the music. He walks down the staircase when he's very sophisticated and he's made all this money, and he picks up a cigarette and it gets lit, and there's a music cue. The conductor is walking and he's got this uneven gait. boom, ba-da, because he's got the extra tail because he's the devil. You put it all in the music. So it feels like with opera, you are the composer, but you are also the playwright, but you are also the film director in creating the film score. And you're adding all of you're constructing through music the entire world, the entire story, the entire movement, along with the song. So you are creating everything in the story through the medium of music. And that's really fun. It's scary too.
Well, I mean, the great thing about the music, the instrumental work you've done, is that there's so much character in that it seems like it's a good fusion of all that.
I'm sitting here at this point in my life with a bit of awe and wonderment and blessing. I feel like every piece, when I've been writing them, they're all my babies and I love them all immensely. And I just wonder how lucky I have been to have gone through such a wonderful journey that brought me and prepared me to write for opera. So when I do have those moments of like, what have I done? I'm so scared. I'm like, yeah, girlfriend, you wrote this, you did that. And they were all moments to help me prepare to write in this really, really big moment. I mean, when I was talking about Colonel Sirix giving me all those opportunities to fail, I mean, I have pieces that failed or were sketches, and but boy, does what I learned from that moment, it's coming into this piece too, So yeah, everything you do. If I know I'm speaking to a lot of young composers, but man, life is your study, and everything you do puts into the well and makes you a richer artist. At least that's what I try to think, and I'm just grateful for everything that I've had, and I'm excited to write opera because now I think, all those experiences led me to the ability to do this kind of storytelling, and I'm grateful for it, and I hope that the audiences will dig it too.
That's great. I'm sure they will. So, Lisa, I just want to say thanks so much for joining us on our first live stream interview, multimedia, whatever. Composer interview.
I wish I was there in the room with you. I am pretty much an organic, authentic person. So all the students that are listening in, everybody that's listening in, just please stay safe and healthy. Yeah. When this is done, and it'll be done, we need artists. So continue honing your craft. Don't let this time, I don't know what to say. It's a tough one, but remember that the arts are going to come out of this and heal everybody and put us back together again. So take care of yourselves immensely and keep, honing your craft. Write, create. And when this is all over, I'm coming out to Utah and we're going to do it again live and in person.
Great. Sounds perfect. In the meantime, if you want to get to know Lisa's work more, go find her website. Many of the pieces are on there. There's also a video of the opera that she did with USUO, No Ladies in the Ladies Book. Yeah. Okay. So you've got a video of that you can see on YouTube. Again, I want to thank Westminster and all the faculty there for letting us do this. You can check us out at Westminster Performing Arts. We'll be announcing our upcoming concert for next year, upcoming series for next year in May. And Katie and I will be playing on April 13th over live stream works by Yoko Ono, Mike Pizarro, and other upcoming experimental composers. And finally, again, I just want to thank Paula Fowler at USUO for making this happen. So thank you all for tuning in.
We love Paula.
Yeah, we love Paula. And we'll see you all hopefully at the live stream next Monday. So thanks.
Take care of yourselves, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.